Greetings, fair listeners, and thank you for joining me once again as we celebrate stories and storytelling in all their forms and the bards and artists who bring them all to life. I am the Tale Collector and your host, Erica Adams. It sometimes saddens me that America, being such a comparatively young nation, doesn't have its own mythology the way other older cultures do. Sure, we have our tall tales, Paul Bunyan, Johnny Appleseed, John Henry, and the like, but I wouldn't go so far as to place Darth Vader, Yoda, Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man on the same pedestal as Zeus, Odin, Shiva, Anubis, and Kukulkan. With all due respect to the former, and despite their wild popularity and influence, I think it may be because they feel too modern and commercialized to me. True mythological figures, in my mind, are ancient and omniscient forces of nature, not only providing supposed explanations for why the world is the way it is now, but existing in a dreamlike time and space beyond mankind's reach and earthly comprehension. Thus it is particularly enlightening to experience a mythological story expressed from the heart of its own native country, even if, or maybe especially when, it's done via contemporary means. Here is the epic story of Son of the White Mare, first released in 1981 and recommended for viewers 16 and up. A beautiful white mare goddess races for her life through a dark forest as her once glorious realm falls. Just as the evil minions in pursuit are about to claim her, the mare finds safe haven within a mighty hollow tree. It is here that she gives birth to a human boy, Tree Shaker, who gains his godly strength from his mother's milk. As he grows to manhood, the mare tells her son the story of the Sky King and Snow Queen, and their three princely sons who married three fairy princess sisters, Autumn Fair, Spring Fair, and Summer Fair. All would have been happy and prosperous had the curious sisters not opened the one door forbidden to them. The three evil dragons, now freed, immediately captured the princesses, killed the princes, overthrew the king, and imprisoned the queen. The queen bore two sons who disappeared. While pregnant with a third child, she escaped, in the form of a white mare. Understanding his birthright and his purpose, Tree Shaker sets out to reunite with his long-lost brothers, Stone Crumbler and Iron Temperer, and with them, journey into the underworld in order to defeat the dragons, reclaim their brides, and restore their kingdom. The plot of White Mare is based on the 1862 Hungarian folktale Fehér by Laszlo Arányi, with director Marcel Jankovic's giving at the beginning a dedication to, quote, the Scythians, Huns, Avars, and other nomadic peoples, end quote. Though Jankovic had wanted to make a fairy tale movie from the start, his original vision couldn't be realized due to the political tensions prevalent in the Cold War Eastern Europe in which he grew up. According to animation historian Charles Sullivan in the Blu-ray's booklet, quote, a scholar of mythology and symbolism, Jankovic initially planned to meld several folktales into a feature that would explore the cycles of time and space. But according to Marxist theory, time is irreversible. A film that focused on the recurring cycles that characterize many myths could be perceived as anti-Marxist by the Soviet-dominated government. Instead, Jankovic turned to The Son of the White Mare, an oral epic of Central Asia that was brought to Europe by the early Hungarians. Like all folktales, it exists in multiple versions. More than 50 variations have been collected by scholars in the Carpathian Basin, and the filmmaker drew elements from a half-dozen accounts of the story. End quote. For unknown reasons, the film wasn't distributed in America upon release. Very strange, not to mention downright devastating, considering the factors that would have worked in its favor. Number 1. Jankovic had already proven himself an animation pioneer beforehand, having directed the very first Hungarian animated feature film, Johnny Corncob, in 1973, and following with the Oscar-nominated short, Sisyphus, in 1974. Number 2. Disney was in the middle of its Bronze Era, struggling due to its namesake's passing in 1966. Number 3. Aside from the syndication of Astro Boy, anime hadn't yet made its mark in the West. And number 4. Very few other Western animated feature films made prior were remotely comparable to it, some exceptions including Fantasia, Fantastic Planet, and Yellow Submarine. Still, White Mare did find success, being placed at number 49 on the Olympiad of Animation in 1984 and premiering at the Los Angeles International Animation Celebration in 1985. Then, in 2019, LA studio Arbalos Films and the Hungarian Film Institute gave the movie a stunning 4K restoration, screening it at the 2019 Fantasia International Film Festival and planning a long overdue theatrical release in the US soon after. This plan was unfortunately shelved in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, so White Mare was instead made available to stream in America through Vimeo in late 2020 and then released on Blu-ray in 2021. The brave hero rescues damsel in distress from evil monsters plot is pretty basic and antiquated on paper, but Jankovic makes it stand out by giving it a phantasmagoric 20th century coat of paint in every sense of the term. White Mare's production and design was heavily influenced by the psychedelic drug culture of the 60s, resulting in a piece meant to stun the senses and mystify the mind as well as entertain the eyes. The music alone speaks volumes, pun intended, of the alien world viewers are about to enter. Though the electronic soundtrack may seem better suited for equally surreal but more contemporarily based movies like Labyrinth, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or 2001: A Space Odyssey, the synthesized ambience fits the mythological setting, dreamy and nightmarish all at once, completely transcendent of time, space, and all things mortal. I think where Jankovic is at his most creative and clever is how he reimagines and enhances the story's traditional fairy tale tropes and symbols with his own unique artistic nuances, namely his highly abstract design and heavy emphasis on vivid colors and symmetrical shapes. This is best portrayed by the three brothers, who are kinda like the incarnation of the Goldilocks concept of too hot, too cold, and just right, as is so with their polar opposite brides and their adversaries, who, by the way, are not dragons in the traditional sense. I think of them more like golems myself, but that's just me. Stone Crumbler, the firstborn, is colored in shades of coppery red with lots of teardrop-shaped curves, some more flattering than others. Such a design, I believe, fits his personality as a careless, hot-headed bumbler, slow in words and wit, with more rocks in his head than in his hands. These traits contrast the vain and sensual nature of his lusty, and I dare say busty, destined bride, Autumn Fair, while paralleling the three-headed dragon, a crude and boorish oaf made of stone. Iron Temperer, the middle brother, is a bit more competent than Stone Crumbler, though not by much. His triangular, silvery blue form represents an arrogance as cold and hard as the metal he molds like clay. His brashness is balanced out by his very needy and very whiny betrothed, Springfair, and her captor, the seven-headed dragon, matches his aggression via the personification of war, a fully armed tank. No, I am not making that up. And then there is Tree Shaker, the youngest, and therefore the kindest, bravest, and overall best, as is visually apparent from his hues of golden yellow and the sun-like spheres adorning his face. Some of his attractiveness is more subtle, his name and special ability symbolizing nature and life, as opposed to his brother's inorganic mineral names, as well as his modesty, as Stone Crumbler goes shirtless and Iron Temperer's smock covers only his front. Likewise, Tree Shaker's beloved, Summerfair, is more reserved and dignified than her sisters, and his enemy, the 12-headed dragon, though his pixelated skyscraper form makes him look like a boss from a vintage Atari game, is nevertheless more terrifying and powerful than his brothers because of his intelligence and foresight. Yet in spite of these obvious differences, I love the artistic touches which illustrate the warriors' brotherly bond. Many shots cut or dissolve from one brother to another in such a way as to give the illusion that they are morphing into one another, while others show the circular ground rotating beneath them as they walk, as if their godly motion is what moves their entire world. And in one of the film's most beautiful sequences, before beginning their journey, the trio swears their undying loyalty to each other by grasping hands around Iron Temperer's triangular club. Their linked arms dissolve into a flowing braid-like design as it rotates clockwise. The sides of the club multiply, changing it into a 12-pointed sun, which in turn transforms into the brothers' divine faces. It's movies like this that make both foreign animation and film as an art form so enthralling to me, not to mention remind me of the majesty and real-world significance of folklore. Jankovic not only turns what would otherwise be a very basic and cliched story into a kaleidoscopic powerhouse of epic fantasy, but does so without diminishing its universal qualities or disparaging its noble heritage. I hope that many more hidden cinematic gems are found and polished so that they may be given the admiration this cosmic jewel was once so sadly denied. Gather around next time for another tale you may have forgotten or have never heard before. Until then, listeners, may inspiration always find you.